All of us have been living with duality. Duality is what causes most of our confusion. Let me give you an example of this. This past week has been, for me at least, a rough week. Why? Because 3 people that I've worked with over the last several decades, who I have a great deal of respect for, all passed away. One committed suicide, the other 2 died of either complications from heart or stroke. And all 3 I had spoken with recently, 2 in the last week, about, let me help you get on a completely rejuvenative program, change everything. And even though these are smart people, they're very accomplished in what they have achieved, they chose not to take that path. What happens when we don't take the right path? And then there's a consequence. The trouble is, we almost never can see what's going to happen based upon the choice we make. Think how many times you've said something, and then later you think, I shouldn't have said that. That was really stupid, insensitive, it was thoughtless, it was selfish. You can't take it back. I don't care how many times you apologize, because what you've done is you've shared an energy. All we are is energy. We are anywhere from 60 to 100 trillion cells, plus more bacteria by 10 times, all communicating, all with the idea that there should be a constant communication that honors life. Well, if I didn't tell my heart how many beats to beat per minute when I'm standing versus sitting versus jogging versus laying down, how does it know? But if you just went for a run, your heart's going to be pumping. It has to supply blood and oxygen and nutrients, and to allow energy, what we call adenosine triphosphate, ATP, to actually combust in a cell. That's what we need to do. So, how does a cell know? Do you have to slow it down? And how does it know to slow it down to what it was before you started exercising? When you eat, the amount of hydrochloric acid secreted in your stomach is different than when you're not eating. And if you eat a piece of tofu, it's different than if you eat a piece of steak. If you ate a steak mildly cooked, the digestive acids would be different than if it was grilled or deep fried. How does it know? But it does. How does it know when you've eaten something that is filled with bacteria? And there's only a couple things it can do. If you have a virus or bacteria, it can raise your body temperature to try to kill it if it's a virus, and give you diarrhea if it's bacteria. But you're looking at the plate, you're looking at the food, you don't see it. You're looking at something right in front of you, and you don't see the bacteria. How does the body instantaneously know that it's bacteria that's harmful instead of bacteria that's good? But it does. How does my eye know to blink about every 8 seconds to create a tear film so that my eyes don't chafe? And what would happen if you couldn't sweat, or if your body in cold weather couldn't constrict? And when it's cold, you constrict to hold in heat. But when you're too hot, it opens it up and allows you to vent it. How does it know to do that? How does it know that our feet should perspire more than our face? You're looking at millions upon hundreds of millions of biochemical processes every single second of your life. And yet you never taught one of those systems ever. It knew. Therefore, to know that your body should be doing things prior to being taught means there was an innate awareness. Well, where did it come from? I'll answer that before this is over, and you'll begin to see how wonderful this unique life process is. We all know how we feel when we're around happy people. We know how we feel when we're around angry people. We know when we're around judgmental people who are hypercritical of us. We know when we are hypercritical of others and how we feel and how they feel, because part of your body language expresses it. We know when you yell at a dog, what it'll do, where its eyes will go and its head will go. All the time we're getting feedback, and yet we pay no attention to it as if it's irrelevant. It's all relevant. How many of you have ever been in a relationship where the relationship was not fulfilling, but you stayed in the relationship because it gave you something else you thought was more important than being alone? How many of you worked at jobs that didn't honor you, didn't honor your education, didn't honor your standards? And yet you thought, well, the job gives me some security. I'm getting financial security here, and that provides me with the things I can buy that allow me to have a life. Therefore, I'll tolerate this long commute. I'll tolerate indifference or even abuse in the office. I'll tolerate all this because I'm getting this payback over here. Why do we do that? Why do smart people do stupid things and good people do bad things? Why do we believe that the people that we should trust are the people who have power when we never look at what they've done with the power that they have been given? And who gives them power? We do. Power doesn't exist till you surrender it. And the degree that enough people surrender their power, that's exactly to the degree that someone else has that power. I believe that most Americans, at least 85% at this moment, are at what I call an end point. An end point is just before you tip, where you've tolerated, you've accepted, you've adapted, but there's no more room. If you do any more, you will tip. And when you tip, that tipping may be bankruptcy, divorce, it may be a heart attack or a stroke. It may be something that becomes cataclysmic to which you cannot retrieve yourself. Why are we all at these end points? How do we get there? Because we believe in duality. It is the core of almost all of our beliefs. Now, this is what my own epiphany recently showed me. The last epiphany I had before this, about 25 years ago, when I found out one night why all the psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and social analysis really is not the full picture. It is part, understanding the background that we come from, how we've been treated, constructively, destructively. That's all good. But it still left half the equation missing, and I found that it was the other half, the life energies, whether you're dynamic aggressive or dynamic assertive, whether or not you're going to do something or not do something, and what level you're going to do something. If you want something to fail, only have adaptive supportives. Have a dynamic aggressive or dynamic assertive, and that group will then be motivated to do something, and then if they're at the upside, then you're going to do it at the upside. If they're downside, you're going to do it at the downside. Anyhow, I'm not going to repeat my work on life energies. What I have found was that it was an important door opening for, a conscious opening for myself and a lot of other people who follow it, including some teachers who now teach this as part of their classes in psychology. We're more than our condition. We're also life energy. And I believe we're now more than our conditioning and we're more than our life energy. We're also something else. And here's the something else. I believe that we should not be focused upon duality as our reality. Now, you're probably wondering, what does that mean? Right now, ask yourself this. Good and evil, right? Talking about evil, right? As if evil were an entity, a standalone entity, that you start off evil, you're evil. And then I'm thinking, everything we do wrong is based upon not understanding that we shouldn't come from duality. Because I don't believe duality exists. I don't believe in such things as love and hate. And think how many times we talk about that. How many times in your relationship you says, I love this person, but I hate this person. Right? Yeah, how many, right?
Every day.
Every day, right? And I'm sure many of the rest of you had that, right? I don't believe there is love and hate as separate entities. I don't. Think of what happens when you have duality. Let's just say that you think that because you're white and educated that somehow you are more entitled to or should be more gifted than someone who is a person of color and less educated. That's duality. And through duality, think that you're a man, a founding father, George Washington, right? Thomas Jefferson, smart man. We all agree he's smart, right? One of the most brilliant presidents in history. But he was also a rampant racist. And he was a misogynist. because he didn't give freedom to the blacks. He didn't respect women. None of the founding fathers gave freedom to women. They were all excluded from power. Right? Some religions exclude women from power. And yet, when you engage in duality, you're caught in this paradox of knowing something intuitively is wrong, but not being able to correct it because of the epigenetics. Do you understand what epigenetics is? Epigenetics means that whatever influence anything has had before in our life, we become it, even if we're not conscious at the time. You could be a developing fetus. You could be some traumatic memory from your mother or your father of what happened in their lives growing up, and that energy comes through into you. That's part of what you're born with, that energy. And it's going to be there. And anything anyone else does to you throughout your life becomes epigenetically imbalancing. And so then one day you wake up and you've got a lot of confusion. You don't know who you are. You're confused about what you should do with your life. You look in the mirror and you're thinking, well, I knew who I was when I was 20. When I graduated from college, I don't know who I am today. Why don't you know? Because more often than not, you have not met certain criteria that would allow you to say, I know who I am because I'm in a marriage, I have children, I'm successful in my career, I have certain financial comforts, and I have some possessions, and I'm respected by my peers. Therefore, I know who I am. That's duality. And it's wrong. Not that being married is wrong, not that having children is wrong, not that being successful is wrong. It's the concept that you must be dualistic. You should not have to be in a marriage or have children or have material possessions or be successful in order to find out who you are. You are who you are. That's where your reality should begin. Everything that you add on to it either honors that or it creates a degree of separation. So when we talk about those damn communists, those capitalists, those socialists, those Jews and Catholics and Arabs or vegetarians, those meat eaters, those educated, those Ivy League pinheads, or those unfortunate, uneducated, the rich, the poor, the middle class. Look how we already divide us up. The super wealthy, the 1%, the 99%. There is no 1% and 99%. That's duality. The moment you create duality and accept it as real, you then no longer have a capacity to change it. But maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe you've all changed what is a part of duality and how it controls your life. Let's just see. Are you a policymaker? No, okay. Do you write the curriculums for textbooks? Do you write the laws that become the state or national government's laws? All right. Do we have one person for one vote? No, because one person can buy millions of votes. And that's why those who are running for office seek out the people who have the money because it gives them an advantage. Well, if they needed an advantage, what is the advantage? The advantage is create duality. Get enough money so you can buy advertisement to make the other person be demonized, the other, duality, not as good as you, not as smart as you, not as decent as you, where you maintain your superiority. But with duality, you are able to be separated off by degrees from logic and reason, from fact and science. Let me give you another example, and I'll give you several, about duality. Health. Do most people want to be healthy? Yeah. Do most people make choices that honor that health? Are we the sickest nation per population in the world? Are we the fattest nation in the history of the world per population? Do we have the most diseased children of any nation per population with our affluence in the world? Do we have an epidemic of adult diabetes in children? Do we drug more children under the age of 14 with medications, including class 2 narcotics, than any other nation in the world? When you and I as baby boomers were going to college and high school, did any of us know anyone taking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? Was anyone committing suicide? Okay, well today kids take these every morning with the full compliance of their family and their physicians and the pediatricians and the U.S. Public Health Service, virtually the entire system that needs to be in control of duality says this is the truth, and every measure against this is false. Do we have absolute proof that every vaccine is safe and effective? Do we have proof that vaccines can be dangerous and harmful? Yes, a lot of science. It's a truth that is so alien to the prevailing dogma that dogma and ritual substitute for reason and common sense. So we say we want women to be healthy. We don't want them to have osteoporosis or hot flashes. So we recommend the medical industrial complex, meaning all doctors, with a few exceptions, all nurses, all hospital administrators, all nurses' aides, everyone in our federal government, everyone in the scientific community, with few exceptions, the entire system solidifies, codifies this codicil of ignorance. It says, take synthetic hormone replacement therapy, and it'll turn off your hot flashes and mineralize your bones. Yes, but your science shows you're going to increase heart attacks, strokes, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colorectal cancer, and dementia by 14%. Now, since there's 10 million women using it every day, that is 1.4 million women every day that you're sacrificing on the altar of medical hubris and ignorance and narcissism. You would think that at some point someone would say, if we're killing all these women and we're giving them this therapy, shouldn't we look at what Native Americans have been using and people of other culture have been using? Why not use Vitex and blood cohosh and get them on the estrogenic foods and low estrogenic foods like broccoli and the cruciferous vegetables and vitamins and exercise? No, that's not a part of it. You see, that's duality. That's out there. So everything that made sense, everything that actually healed the body, everything that prevented disease was no longer allowed to be a part of the official story. It had to be separated off. So they separated it off. And hence, everyone in America, no matter if you came from Harvard or Yale, you had to feel sorry for those pathetic fools, including some doctors and Nobel Prize winners like Linus Pauling. Shame on him. He won 2 Nobel Prizes. He should have been smarter in thinking vitamin C had anything to do with anything. And yet we have 8 million studies on our side. 8 million. 8 million. And they won't read one of them. They can't. Because if they did so, they would acknowledge that the other, duality must always set up an argument against its opposite in order to legitimize itself. We've got to give you these drugs, these statins, even though they destroy ubiquinone, vitamin coenzyme Q10, in order to bring down your cholesterol. But hold on, why not look what causes cholesterol to rise to begin with? No, we don't practice prevention. Prevention is just smoke in moderation, eat toxins in moderation. But the moment you do something good, the entire feminist movement and those in that movement that helped spearhead women making healthier choices, they were denigrated. Not because of what they said was wrong, but because they weren't the authorities who were allowed to say what was right. So then with duality, It's not about being right. It's about knowing that you're the only source that's given the Holy Grail individual truth. And hence, if the average American today were exposed to the finest minds in alternative healing, in holistic health, in spiritual development, in relaxation, in environmental awareness, nothing would change. Nothing. Because once you've gone that far in conditioning people epigenetically, you can't change them. That doesn't mean they can't change, but you can't change them. And you lose too much power the moment any system begins to acknowledge the other. All they will do is they will develop the same tolerance for the other that racists develop for other minorities that they were racist against when the law wouldn't allow them to hang or beat them anymore. Do you really think that any law ever passed actually changed someone's mind about the value of another human being of a different race? Not one. I could name one. All it did was protect you from them being able to abuse you the way they did. It didn't mean that they suddenly woke up one day with epiphany and says, my God, these are human beings. They should be treated with the same love and respect and dignity as I would treat my own family. So understand that every one of our problems comes from an artificial duality. And so now you think, what's wrong with me? I'm 20, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm 60, and I'm unhappy. I'm in an unhappy place. I'm in an unhappy world. I'm against the body politic. So there's someone saying, down with the man in corporate America, all the while smoking their cigarette, eating their McDonald's, drinking their cola, wearing their Nikes, wearing their clothes, using their credit card. Maybe I'm confused. What part of against them are you? Utter, palpable, childish foolishness, and that they can't see it. You can never see what you're in. That's the danger of not understanding the prison of duality. But I'll go further. So we have a medical community where the #1 cause of death in the United States each year, more than heart disease or stroke or cancer, diabetes, is iatrogenesis, or medically induced disease and medically induced error, which can run from 550,000 to almost 1 million people dead per year, plus tens of millions injured. Not a single meeting will happen each year to say, what can we do about this? Not a single group will decide maybe if we have $3 trillion, we should look to where the money's going, why it cost $56,000 to get a simple appendectomy, which would cost $1,200 in another country. Why? We're not even able to ask these basic questions. All we can care about is how many people are covered or not covered, not what the quality of the coverage is. We can't even dialogue right, and that's because the people that control the paradigm control the talking points and control the arguments you're allowed to discuss. So you have seemingly aware people on MSNBC or NPR or Fox having a dialogue on Obamacare. Not once do they ask, does this actually save people's lives? Is this good medicine? Is it preventative medicine? The answer is they won't touch it. It's just who's covered, who's going to pay, instead of, isn't the whole purpose of medicine to save lives, improve the quality of life? Education's the same way. Look at happiness. Everyone tries to be happy, and very few people ever succeed. And one of the things we believe will allow us happiness is if we can succeed in having what we believe are the are the gifts of happiness. For some people, it's if I got my body in great shape, then I'd be more attractive, happiness. If I had more financial security, if I knew that I had someone to get old with, happiness. If I had a better place to live, happiness. None of this has to do with happiness. It has to do with what we're told are the tools of happiness. That's duality. Passion. Passion is different in every one of us. All of you, all over the world. You all find something else to be passionate about. But who in your life allowed you, encouraged you to maximize your passion? Not limit it to what they felt comfortable with and safe with, but let you be passionate. Could you imagine if Picasso, Michelangelo, Maimonides, Socrates, Spinoza, could you imagine if their parents says you can't do this, it makes us feel uncomfortable, you're being too creative, too original, too radical. Galileo, stop with all these crazy thoughts. So imagine if they, in their time, said, you're right, I'm going to shrink back and I'm going to live a life where guilt and shame, fear and insecurity box me in, so I no longer have to make anyone feel uncomfortable about my passion for my beliefs. Imagine if Gandhi or Martin Luther King did the same. But they didn't. And that's what's possible with passion and millions of others who have given us so much that we can be grateful for, because they did not edit, self-censor passion. Think of nurturing. Think of what it means if we're taught at an early age to be nurturing. What would that do? It would then negate conflict and vile conflict and insensitive conflict. We would all care, and we do, when a child is caught in a sewer pipe and the whole world stops for that hour or that day until a kid is heroically emerged. But what about the 26,000 children that die every 24 hours from hunger? Don't they count? When a woman is raped in Central Park, even though the wrong people were accused because they were black. And that's one of the things happen when you have an official code of who should be a suspect, and then how you bring the suspects in to match the crime, guilty or not. What would have happened if the woman was black and the people were white? Do you think it would have been the front page news for weeks? No. In fact, to prove that, I went through all the rapes of Latino and African American women during the same period of time, and there were over 36. Not one was mentioned. Think what happens when your official policy of law and order is you must stop, search, and seize. I haven't seen a single person exiting a Broadway show, a Wall Street firm, a Madison office, or any of the nice suburbs of Connecticut, especially up in Darien, Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut. I haven't seen a single one of the people stopped and searched. Have you? No. No, but 500,000 was stops and searched last year. And when the cop then says you've emptied your pocket and the guy takes out what otherwise is not illegal, an ounce of marijuana, the moment the guy takes out and it shows it, then it becomes illegal and 7-9 years in jail because they're doing their job. Unthinking automatons, militarization of the police that is there not to help, but to make sure that you have no margin of breaking free from the orthodox approach. That's duality. Because then you only have those that break the law and those who are criminals, and if they're criminals, depending upon your conditioning and the duality of that conditioning, they deserve what they get. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the most people incarcerated of any country in the world. We have more people incarcerated than China and India combined, and they have 3.5 billion people, and we have 216 million, and we have more. And yet we consider ourselves civilized. No, we're not. Our government, we're supposed to have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and yet look at what we have. We have fascism, where major government appointments, all of them represent special interest groups at the state and federal level. We have the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, meeting for 30 years in secret, once or twice a year with legislators, handing them, coaching them on a bill. We want this bill because we got 300 corporations, whether it's Verizon or McDonald's or Citibank, we need this in our state. And then suddenly you get a bill that becomes a law in a state, 20,000, and we never knew that they were behind the scenes writing the bills. All the laws in Congress are written by special interest groups. They're written by lobbyists and lawyers and social engineers that bring these to legislators who then pass them off as their own. Once you are a part of the personal truth of your belief, you have to stay with it. That's why the Republicans had to stay with the moronic posturing and stupidity of everything the Republicans did when Reagan was in office and Bush Sr. was in office, as has when Obama and Clinton were in office. And then you just become corporatized. True thinkers realized all these were bad because there was no ability in the political system to have people run for office without buying a vote. You don't see any of you able to run for office and get elected because you couldn't get the money. But what if we took out all money in politics? Then anybody could run for office. And what if you only allowed them to run once? And what if you made it a federal offense? You could not lobby. We're supposed to have ethics and standards on television, and yet the worst foods and beverages are shown to our children with the full knowledge that children watching and eating are going to end up sick. So where are the ethics of the people who are the shareholders in the networks or the people who run the companies? There are no ethics because you never have to have ethics when you're associated with a paradigm. The paradigm is amoral, but its actions can be very immoral. What if we, as I have, realize that these are not separate entities? These are not nouns, but rather verbs. That there's only one truth, and that's universal truth. And we all have it. So if you start with one truth, and if every choice you make comes from that one single truth, then what then can happen? What if we began to live our life in reverse? What if you realize that all of us, here, out there, in England, Ireland, Zimbabwe, everywhere we are watching right now, we're going to live more or less about 25,000 days. That's it. 25,000 days. By the time you're out of college at about age 22, you've already lived over 8,200 days. By the time you go to graduate school, you're up now to 30. By the age of 32, you're already over 12,000 days. By the time you get your family and you have a little time for yourself to where you're in your mid-40s, earlier mid-40s, you're now looking at, all right, what can I do now? When you realize how many days you have left, why would you want to waste them? You can't live them over. And yet we think that somehow we're hanging on by adapting to our pain, adapting to the image of our dual self. We adapt to the victim, we adapt to the abused, we adapt to the person that cries and and oh, my heart aches, and oh, you know, I have a wounded ego, and oh, I was abused. We all were. No one is born without having problems. We all have defining moments in our lives where we wished it hadn't happened, but it did happen. And you can't reverse it. It's there forever because every energy ever in the history of the universe that we experience is with us forever in our lives. It will bear witness to every second we're alive. Hence, if we're living an authentic life from a spiritual perspective, and we honor the sacredness of our choices, then there's only one truth. That is a universal truth. Therefore, if I get away and surrender my individual truths, my individual truth says, I want it all for me. I don't care about you. If I'm the most famous nutritionist in the world, then I should be able to charge $1,000 an hour. If you can't afford my time, tough. Right? Because maybe I'm wrong. But isn't that what everyone does in every single field we know of? So what would happen if in business you said, you know something? Instead of making me so damn rich, I'm already making $20 million a year or $30 million a year, plus all the bonuses and the Black American Express credit card with unlimited spending and private jets. Why not make our company more sustainable? Why not help the employees? Why not give them a living wage? Why not look at the integrity of where we make stuff? We don't have to make a dress in Bangladesh. We could make it with a union wage right here in the United States, with a living wage. We could do that. We'd still be profitable, not as profitable, but we don't share that profit. We keep that for ourselves. Do you know any company that would fail by doing that? No, they wouldn't. Because we used to do that. We used to make the most clothes. We used to make the cars. We used to make things, and we made a good wage. That's when the middle class actually had a quality of life. That's when we were living by a standard, an ideal. But instead, it became not about the we, it became about the me. And when you only think about yourself, then you've immediately created duality. Well, I don't care what you're making. You know, if you're hungry, you're hungry. If you're homeless, because you're lazy. If you're not working hard enough, then we're not going to subsidize you. Really? All the poor people I know are working like crazy, frequently 2 jobs. And when was the last time you actually saw how many people, 150 million Americans, living at, above, or below the poverty line? 18 million hungry children. How those 18 million children, the 1.6 million homeless children after school each day, how are they responsible for their being hungry? Try to show me where an 8-year-old girl who doesn't have enough to eat, where she's responsible for it. They will, mind you. People who are living their whole life blaming others so they don't have to share or change their way will always find a way of victimizing other people. We are all spiritual. We are all sacred. And as long as each day when you wake up, you stop for a second, if you can, help yourself, acting like a victim for a moment in time, and actually honor your spiritual self. Because the moment you honor your spiritual self, all you're going to do is spiritual things. And therefore, you're not removing yourself by degrees from that. That's why I don't believe in evil as a separate entity, only as a consequence of how far we move our way from that. There is no such thing as ultimate cold or ultimate dark. There is only light and heat, the warmth of light and heat, and as long as you stay in the presence of that light and heat, you're illuminated. Your choice is illuminated. They're selfless, they're caring, they're nurturing, they're giving. They're not bounded by guilt and shame and fear and remorsefulness. It's not about the circumstance, it's about the choice. Because as long as you stay in the light of who you authentically are, then you can do everything right. Let's just look at what we could do right if we stay. First and foremost, you'll be nurturing to all people. There'll be no such thing as class differentiation, because behind the color of a skin, or the quality of the clothes, or the type of education, you're dealing with a human being. And as I said at the beginning, we don't know how it is that our heart knows to beat, and our eyes know to tear, and our liver knows to detoxify, and our kidneys know to filter, and our muscles know when to contract and relax. But that's true of every single creature on the earth. So we are united in this wonderful creative spirit. So if I stay in the light of who I am, then I'm not living in duality. So when Bertie Madoff, or Adolf Hitler, or Rupert Murdoch, or all the other people who made choices that impact other people, the moment they go from where they ideally should be, every choice they make, they take a separation. Now you're separated by 1 degree of separation. And then you get into conflict, but you can't get into conflict before you demonize someone. So we had to demonize. Now, did we do the right thing in the Vietnam War? Were we right or wrong? Was there a domino theory? Did Ho Chi Minh want to attack the United States? To the contrary, all the documents show Ho Chi Minh wanted us to support him and the Vietnamese people against the tyranny and the colonial ambitions of the French. So we had a chance to be the ones who could help him rebuild his country. Instead, where we could have given every man, woman, and child in Vietnam, North and South Vietnam, $5,000 at that time. Instead, we caused the death of over 2.5 to 3 million Vietnamese, destroyed their environment, created millions of birth defects, 5 to 58,000 Americans, not including those that came back with post-traumatic stress disorder. And by the way, the latest study shows that more Americans have killed themselves when they came back from Vietnam from post-traumatic stress disorder than actually died in the conflict. And that's also true from Iraq and Afghanistan. 23 American soldiers are killing themselves every day. That's more than all the thousands that died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's going to cost us all told, when it's all said, about $6 trillion. Yet no one is held accountable because the paradigm doesn't apologize. The paradigm doesn't share power. The paradigm doesn't change. Because the paradigm, which should have been to look for ways of cooperating, ways of not allowing those who had special interests. Now, once a special interest gets involved in any paradigm, it's going to distort it and contort it and separate itself like fear, create fear. If you don't support this war, they're going to be here tomorrow. And so, but in order to do that, we have to take away habeas corpus. But hold on. If we honor the Constitution, and we honor the Constitution the way it should be, we wouldn't allow you to spy on us. You couldn't spy on us. You couldn't arrest us without habeas corpus, without due process. So in order to take the ideal, every single institution, every single one, no exceptions, have taken the ideal, taken the spiritual, and they keep removing themselves by degrees until one day you're way over here, and now you got black and white, good and evil. And there is no black and white, good and evil. There's only degrees of separation from good. Now think about that for a moment. Think of the government if it only did good. It kept itself small and functional to protect us, but also to serve us. Instead of a monster, gigantic, metastasizing cancer that serves its own interest and no one else's, like the military-industrial complex, or supporting its friends with private contracts in the energy field, in the banking field. If we had banking the way it should be, and one time was, then you would have at least a 30% reserve by the banks, and they couldn't gamble with your money. And they would allow you to reconcile yourself if you were underwater in a mortgage. They would just simply bring the spiritual thing, wouldn't it be? Who would it hurt if we said, hey, we got 9 million people who cannot afford their mortgages. The value of the mortgage is here. The cost of the mortgage is here. That's called underwater. What if we just bring the value of the mortgage down to the cost of the mortgage? You're no longer underwater. We say we care about people in America. Well, you could have fooled me because I found 17,000 homeless vets in Florida sleeping in the woods. I did a film on it called American Veterans Forgotten and Betrayed. But at one of the stand downs where you go once or twice a year and it was eerie because it was 5 o'clock in the morning and I was on the road and I was across the street from the stand down, but it was so foggy I couldn't see anything. So I had my cameraman just had the mic on, I was waiting, and it was supposed to start at 6 o'clock. So here comes 6 o'clock and I still can't see anything, can't hear anything. And I said, "Are you sure we're in the right place?" He said, "Yeah, we're in the right place." And then as it began to rise, there was a 2-mile long line of the people who had been there all night, standing in silence, just to get some food or sleeping bag. And so I talked with them all day. I filmed them. And I said, when Sean Hannity and the others, march you off to war to go fight the evil, the other, duality, what happens when you come home and now you're the other? You've got post-traumatic stress disorder, you've killed people, or you've seen things that you weren't prepared to handle, which were not spiritual. And then you couldn't live at home, and you went off on your wife or your kids. You couldn't hold a job, and now you end up here homeless. A young guy, like 30 years old, said, "I'm so embarrassed because the last 6 months, the only way I've been able to get any food is I sneak into people's lawns and pick some fruits off their trees." And he said, "They don't want to help us if they know you're a homeless vet." So I said, "Well, how bad is it?" And one guy, an older guy, said, "Well, I'll show you how bad it is." So he showed me a park, which was a veterans park, built for veterans, but if you're a homeless vet, you'll be arrested if you sit in it. And now in 60 communities, if you're poor and you're living in your car, you could get 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine. So where exactly is anyone, any of these low-life bureaucrats, any of these people who are in power, where are these people making decisions that are coming from any spiritual place? And yet on Sunday, they'll either go to a synagogue as hypocrites, or a church as a hypocrite, or a mosque as a hypocrite, and yet during the week, they'll throw someone's ass in jail because they're the other. They've separated themselves by degree of separation. Do you understand what I'm saying now? There's only one truth from which everything else separates itself. The trouble is, once you realize how separated you are from that truth, it's your responsibility to bring yourself in a quantum level back. But if you don't want to come back, what you'll do is you'll say, "No, I'm getting rid of all this clutter in my house. It's too much. I can't do it." Yeah, you're right. Because if you got rid of the clutter, you'd have to change your story. And people know you by your story. So you've mastered the art of your story when you don't have a life. Watch how when people don't have a life, where they're not doing anything from a spiritual place, they're either A, enrapture themselves in a religion. Remember, almost the vast majority of people who founded religions, they did not start it based upon religion, they started based upon spiritual principles. But then how those original spiritual insights then were taken over and compromised and added with layers and layers and layers till one day it's so contradictory. God loves you, God will kill you. God believes this, God believes bash a baby. And you're thinking, well, how can this possibly be the same person? Doesn't make sense. But if you're a true believer, you're not supposed to question anything. A true Democrat doesn't question, a true Republican doesn't question, a militarist doesn't question, a cop doesn't question. All those cops just shot the guy in New Mexico. Remember the guy? I mean, here they are, all these cops with full vests, bulletproof vests. All they had to do, if they wanted to apprehend him, and he was just coming down the hill. He wasn't breaking any law. All they had to do is restrain him. But instead they killed him. And that's what they do all the time, especially in New Mexico. And yet that's considered normal. And immediately the police have got to close ranks. You never found them. You never find them saying, "Jesus, what have we become?" We've lost the moral position we should have been in. Now we're just a militarized group of thugs who know we can get away with anything because the people who are overseeing us, the people who are politically powerful, are going to defend us. How far do you go from anything responsible to where you live in this netherland, this quicksand, this septic system? And yet that's where they live. And it's just as bad on the other side. The New Age people want everything to be instantaneous. They want to think something and put it in the universe and suddenly it's supposed to come back. Nonsense. We have been given nothing but fraud, opportunists, and egotists, exploiting people's vulnerabilities and calling it spirituality. We've had no authentic spiritual movement for decades. And the true spiritual people know that. You don't need to believe in reincarnation. You don't need to blame your mother or your great, 16 relationships ago and stop looking for your spiritual other. Stop all this nonsense. Because one day your 25,000 day is up and you're gone. And the only thing anyone's going to remember most people for is the fact that they consumed and existed. When all of us have the capacity to give back and give and share and create a we. But you can't do it if you're living in duality. And we live in duality. We pride ourselves in what we have allowed ourselves to be separated and cut and boxed and pieced. We want to be all these different things. Well, you can't be. You're only one thing. We're all just one thing. We're just human beings, should live our lives at the highest ethical, moral level we can. If I live my life at an ethical, moral level, I'm not going to lie or cheat or steal or abuse or manipulate. Period. Now, if that costs me, if I have to say no to things, if I have to say no to opportunity that would compromise who I am, I would rather live with not compromising myself than know that I've compromised myself and then I got to apologize for it through all the acts and deeds where I adapt to it. Because more often than not, we don't apologize, we adapt. We adapt to our pain, we adapt to other people's pain, we adapt to our dysfunction, we adapt to other people's dysfunction. We surround ourselves with people who are willing to compromise so we don't have to feel any pain of growth. Well, when exactly do you think this is going to get better for you? It doesn't get better as long as you have adapted to a degree of separation. For example, women's rights. We shouldn't even be discussing women's rights at all. It should just be a woman has all the rights of a man all the time. We shouldn't have to even just dialogue this and we still don't have an equal rights amendment. And yet over 60% of women are the voters. They can't even vote themselves. That's how conditioned women in this society are. We have no sexual liberation. We never have had a sexual liberation. We should have power over our body, power over our mind, empowering women, allowing the power that is authentically in women to actually be released. Do you realize how terrified most men would be, and virtually all leaders of all major religions would be, if women really liberated themselves? And yet, instead of accepting that they've been held hostage and prisoner, they adapt. So once you adapt, you're over here now. You don't get a merit badge because you show how you suffer, and yet we're supposed to believe that because we suffer in life, it makes us a better person. No, it makes you a dumb person. Because suffering in and of itself and adapting to your suffering is a division. It is a part of that duality. I'm a better person because I suffer. Why? Why are you better because you suffer? Show me. Give me an explanation. I'd like to hear some smart person tell me why you're better because you suffer. We're not better because we suffer. A smart person doesn't have to suffer to justify and honor their life. You're out there doing something with it. And because so many of our leaders, all of our leaders are sociopathic or psychopathic, and they're the ones who create duality, because the only way that you'll believe in them and trust them and vote for them, give them your money, is if you believe that somehow they are in touch with something you're not. Their personal truth is exceeding your spiritual truth. Well, I want to tell you, your spiritual truth is more relevant than every powerful man or woman that ever lived in this country, if they came from an artificial construct. Don't tell me you wrote the Declaration of Independence and then support slavery and that I should respect you. I don't. And that's delusion. That's that denialism. And we live in perpetual denialism. Remember, for every degree that you separated yourself, and it starts simply, okay, I can tell you the truth or I can tell some lies. I can be honest or I can be manipulative. And the moment you start that, then it makes it easier the next time and the next time and the next time and the next time. So one day, you're way to hell over here lying and manipulating and acting and boo-hooing and, oh, how you feel. I don't give a shit how you feel. All right? I care how you are, not how you feel. How you feel is an artificial construct from being over there, because I know how you're going to feel if you simply live authentically and spiritually. You're going to be happy. All right? Shift your energy. We've heard of shape-shifting. Shift your energy to deal appropriately with the issues in front of you. But the moment you're way over here, where every choice you're making is the other, you've been so compromised, all you're going to feel is bad or lonely or desperate or anxious or insecure or depressed or confused. I don't know who I am. Of course you don't know who you are, because you've taken an identity that's no longer authentic. You're not living an authentic spiritual life. You're living an artificial construct life. Do you understand that? Our confusion becomes who we became, that was measures and steps away from the authentic self. Till one day we don't understand who we are anymore. But we're still that person. We're just not honoring it. All of our choices are for that one, not this one.